Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. A king isn't born, Alexander. He is made by steel and by suffering. A king must know how to hurt those he loves. King Philip II of Macedon. Our guest today is a longtime friend of the Culture Matters podcast. I've known them damn well at least 10 years. They've been a friend, a consigliere, someone to think through, a thought partner. Of course, they have a background from companies, massive companies that know culture, from Morgan Stanley to Prudential. They actually have been in and around the professional service industry for well over 20 years, some financial services and business development advisory on the accounting side, every which way to help someone actually improve their circumstances in and around business, working with small, medium sized enterprises, high net worth individuals, and so much more. Yes, they've been on the Culture Matters podcast before, so I challenge you after this episode, go listen to episode 399, The Goal Oriented Roadmap, and episode 622. Listen to the voices outside your orbit. Without further ado, we have business development at Saks LLP, Joe Silva Jr. Thanks so much, Joseph Silva, for coming on the Culture Matters podcast. Put him in the ring.
Jay, it is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for that wonderful Macedonian quote. I'm not Macedonian, but a lot of the good leaders, obviously, from that time and era, or that era and that space. So, Jay, I appreciate it. You do a great thing by having these podcasts. You bring a lot to people that they don't know they need sometimes, and once they hear it, it's like, wow, the light bulb goes off, right? And it's like, hey, man. And I think going back to it, I feel very fortunate to be involved with Culture Matters, or at least ancillarily, um, from the beginning, because I've seen the evolution, and you really were ahead of the time of understanding the need for having a strong culture within an organization and understanding the culture within an organization, because I think we're seeing it now, right? With the silver tsunami, right? With all the business owners that are rolling out that, well, they need to retire and they don't have succession candidates. And they are desperate to find somebody because they have to realize their retirement, they have to actually
Mm,
sell the business. So, or move it to a qualified person who can continue. And unfortunately, that's it's a small base coming up behind that large wave of silver, excuse me, and I can say because I have some myself graying business owners that they want to be done, right? They want to get out, or at least shift down to a different speed than what they're running at right now. So, and one of the key things with that, to the point, is culture. It's very hard if you're a business owner and you're 70, let's say 70 years old, or in the 60 to 70-year-old range, you're used to running things a certain way and doing things a certain way. And let's say your potential candidate to come in is, I don't know, late 20s or 30s. It doesn't mean that the person is bad or good on either side. It just simply means that there's clearly going to be some generational differences along the way. And without that culture being strong internally, that person who's selling the business owner who's selling, is unlikely to have a long-term positive relationship, and in turn be able to realize his retirement or her retirement and be able to move on. So culture is huge. We're seeing it now. We're seeing it now
right.
with everything happening with private equity. You might remember, like, Barbarians at the Gate was kind of a thing, and guys coming in and leveraged buyouts and hostile takeovers was a thing, right? And it was like, those guys are the bad guys. In today's world, they're the good guys, because private equity is now one of the few areas where you can get the funds in order to be able to move on into retirement. Because other than that, you have to go and find your own candidate. Now, private equity still, still has to, you want to build a portfolio. They're hoping to give you cash influx. So they're coming in, but they still want that as well. They want the growth. They want, if you're at four, multiple four, let's say, EBITDA, they want you to go to six, seven, eight, nine, 10. That's their goal. But it allows that business owner an opportunity to move on. But however, you still need someone to take over. Private equity typically can help. But once again, even in that space, culture is a tremendous factor, right? You got to have a strong culture.
Can you elucidate on this business owner and retirement? Because maybe for many, they're not privy to, wait, what do you mean? Aren't all business owners just unbelievably wealthy and like they're the man? And it's like most people don't cannot or aren't
Right.
conceptualizing the responsibility proportionate to that authority and that timeline. What do you mean retirement? Like that's something that they're looking at too.
So it's interesting. So I spoke with an engineer. Well, he's the owner, CEO of an engineering firm, right? And perfect example, perfect conversation. He says he's at a networking event. And I said, "Hey, man, well, yeah, how's business?" He said, "Well, I'm here." And I thought, in a way, he's saying that's a good thing, like I'm here, right? He was referring to the fact that there was no one else to do it, to go to those events. So I'm going to go into this. I'm giving you something right now, and any listener that does this, you'll have to, if you do it before me, you're going to give me a percentage, because it's one of those things where it's a great idea. It's something I'm working on right now, but I haven't really formulated it. So what I came to figure out is that there are two things that the younger generation does, I should say less of. I don't want to say they don't because that's, a broad stereotype, but having teenage boys and having exposure to in general, that generation, I kind of understand some things, is that we don't know how to sell and we don't know how to, and selling is like dating and we don't know how to do either anymore, right? To use the example, right, let's say you're eighth grade going into high school, you're fantasizing about what's going to be like. You're dreaming, you're visualizing, you're thinking, man, this is going to be great. You have no idea, no concept who you're going to meet, what's it going to be like. Well, in today's world, you have a lot of technology is giving you that information. You already know who the people are. You're online, you know who they are already. So the old days, you had that excitement. Then you go into school, right? And then you see someone, you're like, oh, that person's attractive. I would like to know that person. Well, guess what? You have a whole strategy now you got to create to in order to get to know that person, figure out where their classes are, where's their locker, how can you line up so you can coincidentally bump into each other, right? That's selling, right? You're trying to network and how do you get to it, right? But today's world, what is it? I'm gonna text them. Hey, you know so and so? I'm gonna message them, right? It's right to the chase. It's right to the not even the chase, it's past the chase, it's right to the end result. Same thing in class. You have to think of something witty. You have to say something witty. You have to actually be engaging. You have to wear maybe something that's attractive. You have to do a lot of things in preparation. Again, not so much today. Also, let's not forget the gatekeeper, right? You got to forget the number. You got to get the courage up. Ask for the phone number. Then actually call. Get a call. No texting. Call. Voice. Who would you get? The primary number one gatekeeper. The hardest gatekeeper if you're in business beyond anyone that sits at that desk, the dad. Hello, Mr. Smith. How are you this evening? I'm calling to speak to Janie. This is Joe Silva from her math class. La 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 la, right? You had to have the pitch, man. You can come off like a schlep because guess what? It's a hang up. Who is this guy? Wrong, because that person's guarding their most precious possession, right? So you had to be there. You had to really do that work. And then, I mean, again, it goes on. Right? I'm not going to give you all the book. That's a good chunk of it, though. But I'll give you the whole thing. But the point being is that so that culture, right? The business owner who's retiring, that same guy going back to that engineer, he's at networking events. Why? Because the people he has in his office don't aren't comfortable doing the blocking and tackling, the face to
Well,
face. And so when they aren't comfortable, then they don't want to do it, or they don't like to do it, or just not good at it, right? And what happens is the question is posed, well, how are you going to get to be a partner? Like, I say it's in accounting, right? This has been asked. How are you going to get to be a partner? How are you going to move up in ranks, right? And you know what the answer is? A lot of times, I don't want to. I mean, you don't want to. You can make a lot of money. Well, it's a different world today. If you said, why did you go into this career? Why'd you go into accounting? Why'd you go into financial service? Why'd you go into being a doctor? Yeah, you might say I want to help people, but you know what it was? I want money. Those guys have a lot of money. So the mindset was more about how can I make a lot of money? And even today, if I want to be a business owner, I want to make a lot of money. That's how they do it, right? But they don't understand there's the work involved. So, but unfortunately, coming out, people they think when they come out of college, I want to make money, but I don't want to work too hard. So I don't want to do more than 9 to 5. I don't want to go to networking events. I don't want to do these things. Not that that's 100% necessary, but it's a part of it. You have to meet people. So in turn, that business owner says, well, I still have to do this. I still have to be the rainmaker, the person who brings in money to this organization. So the problem that you have is the bigger companies are getting rolled up into the private equity because it makes sense for private equity, right? Where this is really a factor are your smaller companies because they're not attractive enough. There's not enough there. There's not enough meat on the bones, if you will, for a private equity company. So who is helping that company? Where are they going? They don't. They can't. They're not getting that deal. Not as often as someone, let's say, that might be twice as big or 5 times as large. So they're kind of stuck and they have to keep working because they can't find that candidate, that succession candidate to come in to be able to groom and take over. Because it's not just a one to one. Hey, you're great. You want to take over? Okay, sign the paperwork. They have to be vetted. They have to have the right culture, right? They have to understand the organization. So in that situation, they're stuck because a lot of times that person, they have to go through the mill. Well, if I'm thinking about retirement, how much time do I have to get someone up and running, have them vet them, first of all, and have them up and running and actually start to engage in the process? That's a tough proposition. And the more that you have more businesses that are on the market and the less people behind them, you have even less opportunity to find the right candidate to get in to fill that spot. So yeah, it's a tough situation. I saw it when I was in financial services. A lot of the conversation was about the average advisory practice. The average advisor who was running their own practice was well into the 60s, and this was when I stopped. I was in financial services almost 19 years in 2016, and so I imagine that number is even higher now. It might be late 60s into the 70s, but for the same reason, they don't have a qualified candidate to step up to take over that business. So it's a professional service is a great example for that. Any specialized knowledge businesses, manufacturing, high tech manufacturing, things of that nature, it's very hard if you don't have someone who understands that business to come in and be able to actually be that candidate who may take over at some point.
Hmm. You know the adage of, or not, statistic, most people's wealth is in their home. Is it analogous? Most business owners' wealth is in their business,
For sure. Yeah.
like statistically.
Yeah, because and if you're a business owner, right? I mean, you're if you a lot of business owners own their buildings as well, right? So technically, you say in real estate, that's also part of it as well, right? It's in reality. So if you're a business owner, you may own the business, the location, the building. Of course, you own the business itself, and and then you own maybe your own real estate, right? So at some point, you're thinking a lot of things. You're thinking, your own real estate, as in, let's say you're in Jersey, and you're like, well, I'm done. I'm going to go to Florida or South Carolina or Tennessee or Texas. You have to sell all that as well. So there's a lot of pieces that have to be involved, not just, okay, I'm just going to sit here and go sit on the beach in Jersey, because that's not what necessarily a lot of them end up doing. They want to get out, they want to move somewhere else. So yeah, it becomes hard because they can't get that person in the door. And when they, again, it's a longer time frame. They need to plan for that off ramp, right? It's a long off ramp to get rid of all those things, to get rid of the real estate, to get rid of the business itself. And a lot of times the business is when you say what they own, the business itself. A lot of times is goodwill, right? It's the business owner themselves. So a lot of times it's not a simple I'm out, right? I have let's say an Amazon online store, and there isn't so much goodwill necessary there. It's more about product and agreements and contracts and what's already in place. But if I'm a professional services organization, a lot of times my name's on the door, and if they know I'm gone, so may half the clients go, right? So it becomes tough without that proper planning to get the people in the door up and running. A lot of times I think though, if they would have that understanding of the culture and get that meshing from the beginning, it would probably save them a lot of time and effort, but it's not what they typically do.
In past generations, would you say it was more so there was a greater likelihood that someone would be interested or willing to take that spot, and then it was more of education and integration, whereas today, even the generations today, maybe that's how I'm taking this, less even interested or willing. But of course, the capital markets are more involved in the private space. So most companies are business owners are going that, oh, let's partner with private equity and they'll help me with this. So that's a proliferation of the because of those two things converging.
I believe there's multiple things actually, but yes is the short answer. It's a perfect storm, is what it is, right? So you have less people, as in general, the pool of people. As a for instance, let's take accounting for instance, just because I know this, and I think they do it with the CFP as well. That's a certified financial planner, but with the CPA exam, they've actually lessened the requirements to become a CPA because they weren't getting enough people to sit and become CPAs. So they had to reduce certain qualifications or adjust certain qualifications in order to get them in the door. That's where we're at. So what you have is you have a pool of people that would normally go into that group, that's a smaller group, right? You have less people who want to do that. You have less people that are starting from the baseline and staying with a small firm, let's say, and growing up with that firm, right? I see a lot of is you have the guys coming out and gals coming out of college for accounting, let's say, and they go to the bigs, and they go through the mill, they get the training, and then they start to shift down. They start to go to smaller firms or firms that are less in size than the big ones, right? Because they don't want to run that mill. They don't want to be in that you're working 12, if it's tax season, excuse me, even maybe greater than that, a lot of hours. And they don't want to be in that situation. So they want to go to smaller firms where they feel that the quality of life will be better. And it probably is a bit better. But what happens is then they also, I mean, because look, for any business, you're still going to have those times where it's tough, right? You have to work a lot of hours. I've owned my own business and I've been in those spaces. It requires you to shift speed whenever the speed is necessary to be shifted, not just your own pace. When you work for someone and you are quote unquote a 9 to 5, well then that's it. Your speed is your speed, right? But
I'll be right here till 11
that's
p.m.
that's exactly it because you have to the speed shifts, so do you. That's what a business owner has to do. So what happens is they don't right exactly exactly. You got the straws on both sides. Um, so what happens is they don't want to be in that space. So you have less qualified candidates who actually are kind of apprenticing up to become that partner in charge of a smaller firm, even the mid-sized firms. So that's what you start to see there. So you have the pool of people being small. You have the less people apprenticing into business, and that's not just financial service. I mean, it's anywhere. I mean, it's HVAC, right? I mean, that's why the private equity is so involved with the trades because though they don't have enough people, they don't have enough. They don't have qualified candidates coming in who want to actually take over. They just have people that maybe get some people that can work. That's great, but there's a big gap of between that and who's qualified to actually take over the business. So it's a perfect storm, is the point. And then you have the potential that some people view things as being commoditized, right? Tax work, if you just filing a return, they say, oh, it's commoditized. I can just get that online. Or investments, I can just get that online. Or legal, I can just drop my documents online, right? And to a degree, it's true, you can, but what really matters is the advisory side as to just because you can get investments online, you can get all kinds of investments online. Who's going to advise you to say this is the right one for you, right? You have a unique situation. This is right for you, and also understand you as a person and psychologically to say, you know what? Yeah, we on paper this looks good, but understand that maybe there's certain variability here that you are not comfortable with because I know you and I know you have, certain things in your life that might make it uncomfortable for this much risk. You might even take less. Or the other side is, look, even though it's saying you are risk averse, you need to get to this goal. So you might need to take on more risk. Let's talk about that. And that's just in the financial services space, but that's those types of examples exist in all those spaces, right? They're
Mm.
just it's the perception is things are commoditized, but the reality is you still need to have that person, especially with AI, right? The perception is commoditized, but you still need to have that person to understand you and how those billions of products out there actually affect you and fit into your space.
How would you say that you work alongside your clients and your partners, in the spirit of partnership to prepare them for partnerships with the private capital markets? Is
Well, you
that a
see,
big
we have
piece of this, the
what's
advisory piece of it?
So it's interesting. We have a what's called a task team, which is transaction advisory services. We also have an investment bank, which for a firm that's a top 100 firm, there aren't many that actually have their own investment bank, right? Saks has done a fantastic job. You got Saks Capital Advisors, you got the wealth advisors, you have the technology advisors, and you have, of course, the audit, tax and advisory services as well. So, I mean, we have all those spaces because we understand that in that client's ecosystem, we need to cover those spaces. We need to cover them from the beginning to the, I don't want to say end, but to the transition, right? Whatever it might be. And having that the capital markets available, having the investment bank, having the transaction advisor service available is huge because that planning really needs to be done usually 4, 5, 10 years before you actually get off because you need to start rolling things forward, doing certain strategies, investigating the options, and getting your own internal picture solid, right? What does that look like? Who is going to come to the table on these things? And it's multiple people at different times, legal, the financial guys, the banks, the governmental, depending on what we're dealing with here, what organization we're dealing with. But that's why we have the experts in their specific areas. The beauty about the firm starting in Parsippany is that look, we're the headquarters is there. It's just a skip away from New York City, and honestly, right here in New Jersey, not far away from Philadelphia. We are at the epicenter right there in that northern New Jersey where we started, though we are again in Ewing, also in South Jersey, and we're expanding in those areas, South Jersey and Philadelphia as well. But we are at the epicenter of getting the type of talent that understands businesses and how they need to move going forward, what needs to be done going forward. So much, so much great New York, Philly. I mean, even heck, Boston, you get up into Connecticut, Boston, down to Baltimore, DC, talent is just hovering around this area. And then honestly, with the remote situation today, we can get talent anywhere. And being lean, look, it's public knowledge, we took on 19% private equity to be able to get the cash influx to grow and expand. However, we did not want to take on any more than that because we wanted Sax's personality, its culture to still exist, right? And that's what sometimes happens. You get greedy. Well, I say greedy, but it might make sense for you, for any firm, to take on more, right, of that private equity exposure. We did not. We did not want that because we understood that you also, whatever you get, you give, right? You're giving up something. So that was enough for us, enough to grow, build out the technology division, build out the capital markets division, build out everything that we have and expand. So and that's a tip of the hat to our CEO Joe Demiano. I mean, he's phenomenal visionary in this space. I mean, it's honestly, it's I've been around different leaders, obviously in this space and outside of this space, and without question, he is one of the shrewdest guys, smartest guys. Just he gets it. Yeah, and it takes a lot to be able to balance the I don't want to say balance to grow business at a tremendous rate, but also keep a solid family like culture in place is it's tough, very tough, and I'm sure you know that. So it's again a strong testament to how he's handled it and done it, and he's done it the right way. So yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting.
What would you say are core values that make an advisor?
Well, it's got to be they're okay. So in no particular order, right? Empathy. You got to be empathetic. You have to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Now, maybe you're not going to do it exactly, right? But and I think that's where a lot of quote unquote salespeople, business development people go astray in that they want to give you what they have and they want you to take it. Whereas if you don't put yourself in the other person's shoes and say, look, if this was me over there, what do I need? What problems do I need to solve? Right. So empathy is at the top without question. Empathy is huge. You have to be you have to be confident. You have to be confident in the sense of your product, whatever you represent, that you truly believe in it. Right? If you don't, go somewhere else. Go to something else where you do, because that comes through at the end, right? If you are not truly believing the message that you're giving, right? The opportunity or offer that you have, then it's not going to go anywhere. And you need to be you need to be understanding, you need to be judicious in understanding what it is that you are offering. Because if you just don't care, like I'm just selling stuff, right? I mean, and I know it's for professional services, like maybe there's a certain component of this, and if you sell some type of widget where it's not necessarily tied to something that's guidance based, advisory based, but maybe it's different. But in advisory based space, you have to be an advocate for the client, right? You have to act. I mean, for 18 years, I was in that space where at some points you were act as a fiduciary. You had to act in the client's best interest. So, in order to be someone who's successful, and not just monetarily, but just in life, I mean, you have to have empathy, right? You have to have confidence. You have to be able to have your eyes wide open to everything because things change fast, right? You got to be flexible in the sense that you have to understand that AI today, right? AI a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, completely different animals, right? I use AI because that's obviously the talk of the town right now, right? It's a hot topic, and it can be a useful tool. But it's changed so fast that people are just cowering from it. And we saw the same thing happen with the internet. I did, at least. I'm old, so I saw it happen back then, where people were like, you know what? I'm not going to get involved with it. And let me tell you, they got rolled over. That wave that came through for that, the IT wave that came through, I saw advisors at the time get crushed, and they went to a tenth of their lifestyle because they weren't adaptable, right? And that's what I say with flexibility, the adaptability, you have to be those things. If you truly want to be an advisor, and you know, on my side it's different because I am an advisor, but I'm also a business development person, right? So when I was in financial services, I held both hats, financial advisor and business development, because I had to generate the business. I had to be the rainmaker, bring it in, and then be the advisor, which I realized, number one, there's a lot more smarter people than me out there, a ton of smarter people than me. So it became easier for me to become just a business development guy because then I had a great way of being able to identify, connect the dots, right?
Mm.
Your problem, and say, you know what, I know where there's a solution for this, and let me get you there, right? When it was me doing it, fortunately, I had some great backing between Morgan Stanley, Prudential, LPL at the time, so I had great resources. But there came a time when I realized I was better suited to serve my clients via being that business director, business development director, being that guy who connects the dots. And it really went across multiple industries and outside even what I did. But people, they would say, "Oh, I'm struggling with this, that, and the other thing." I said, "Well, have you met so and so?" Because that's what they do. They 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 solve this problem all day. So it just became a knack for me. And so I realized that that's really where I was best suited. And it really paid off when I went to IT because I am not an engineer by any measure, right? I'm not a technician, but I understand it enough to be slightly dangerous. But what I understand better is who to connect with and say, well, listen, you need to talk to our Cisco CCNA times X2, who's, a super genius. That's the person you need to connect with if we're talking about having these secure infrastructures that you want in place. Let's get the right people to the table. And in turn, the same way going over to the accounting space. I'm not an accountant. I understand it arm's length because of financial services, but more importantly, I understand the need for it and the solutions that we provide, especially as an organization, the different solutions that are provided. I understand that. So I understand on the other side where a client may be sitting, prospect may be sitting, and to say, hey, you know what? We've helped people with that problem. Let me get you to our expert and just have a conversation. I've got a feeling you can work through some things and you might have some solutions that make sense for you. And we can go from there.
How do you see making connections creating value?
Well, I think it's a very similar concept to the internet these days, right? When the internet started out, you had so much information, but it was in one space. And only if that information was connected somehow to another space could you multiply that, right? Because everything moves exponentially when it's connected. AI is a perfect example, right? A large learning model that takes in information and then connects more dots. And because of all those dots being connected, they get your information gets better, your base gets bigger. So in the same way in this world, connecting those dots, having a network is everything. because the information moves so fast right now that even to get online and find and say, what's what's this, that, and the other thing, that's great. But you still need to ultimately get to a person to be able to provide those services and solutions if you want true advice. Again, people say, well, I can just do it online, it's commoditized. And again, you live and die by that. But I know, like, for instance, legal, right? Whatever contract is drawn up is based solely on the letter of that law, of that document. Couple of words that are turned around, whole thing is a different look. I'm not an attorney, but I know enough attorneys to know that if it's not structured the right way, they can find those holes where that language is not sound, just a little bit, an and instead of a but, could be a massive difference. But the average person may not know that. I wouldn't necessarily know that, right? That's why I bring it to an attorney. What do you think about this, right? Any kind of contract language, what do you think? I need validation. I need verification. So having someone that you can go to be able to connect those dots, because ultimately what you're doing, and this is the commodity that is the most precious of all, is time. If you cannot replace time, right? And that's the thing that most business owners, when they get to it, they understand it's not money. Money buys you the ideally a better way to optimize your time, a better way to spend your time, right? That's what money gets you, is choices for how to use your time. When you have that, you have money, you can do that. If you don't have money, you're stuck because you're working. Like, I have to give up my time to get money. When you're able to connect dots, you're able to have things move faster because you can get to answers faster. So in turn, you're saving time. And that, again, is the biggest thing. And that's where people have it. Like you said, I knew it when I was a financial advisor. I know my guys at Saks know it now. They're the first call. Hey man, should I lease a car? Where should I get it from? Who's got the best deal? I need this, I need that. Who do you know? Who's the best person? Where's the best place I should go? Why? It's a one-stop shop because I know they value that opinion. They value that advice. Saves them time and they don't have to vet them at that point because they've already been vetted.
What are some common mistakes small business owners make when trying to build their board of advisors?
What happened? The biggest mistake I've seen is that they want to build it after it happens, as opposed to building it so it can grow into it happening. That's 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 the problem. It's like the fish tank example, right? If until you buy the bigger fish tank, that fish isn't going to grow past that size. You got to get the bigger fish tank. So if you're a business and you're moving, you need to have that board of advisors in place. Now, that board of advisors can be a lot of things. You don't have to have a formal board, and that's where people get messed up a lot of times, and they think they have to do things in such a certain way, a formal way, or a very specific way. The reality is, what you need is for a board of advisors, you just need to have some qualified people that have been in business, have advised in business, that will, bottom line, give you the honest answer, right? And I know business owners that I know business owners that were um, offered, right, certain amount of, like, let's say, money for investments, for like this group of people are saying, hey, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. And I advised them, I said, look, you should you should be a board to this person, because not only they need the money, but they need the money and they also need advice, because otherwise that money you're giving them is going to go away, right? They need the path. And that business owner refused that board because they did not want someone else influencing their opinion. So they're unfortunately in a position where they're not going to grow because they don't want to hear the honest answer. And that's what I'm saying. You have to have people that are going to give you stuff you don't want to hear. They're like coaches, right? They're like business coaches. They're going to give you stuff you don't want to hear, but you have to pick the board that you trust, that they care about you, and they're going to give you answers not for their benefit, but for your benefit. So
Mm.
that would be the advice there.
Where do you see opportunity for the youth coming up?
Oh, I mean, really all over the place. So if I was to start over right now, what I would do, there's a couple paths, let's just say, a couple paths I'd look at. One, I would look at absolutely going to a trade school, right? HVAC, plumbing, welding, anything tangible, because as we move things forward, the jobs that are at risk are anything where you need to move knowledge, right? Move data, move information. that's in that's right now in jeopardy because of AI, automation, etc. What's right now at least, not in jeopardy, is when you have to move hard assets. You have to move objects. So AI may help to streamline Amazon deliveries, but you still need a truck driver to come to your house. And you still need someone to drop off something at your door. You still need a postman, right? Till they have automated cars, right? Till they get to that place, which could be at some point down the road. But today's world, and at least for the near future, you still need someone to actually physically lift that and bring it to you. So HVAC, you still need someone to physically install the system, right? You still need plumbing, you still need someone to physically do the work. So that would be it. However, what I'd also say is you say, well, that's it, then you get your certifications, what have you, and you're done. No, but my second thing is then go to college. Then still go to college to learn how to run a business, right? To learn how to run a business, but also how to network because that's how you learn how to connect. You get into this world, this universe, this petri dish of other people that you have to figure out how to coordinate, how to handle things, do just live with them. So that would be it. That's one path, and that's a path I probably look at because it just makes sense. You could own the business, you can really grow up in it. It's not going away anytime soon, right? But I mean, it goes back to it has to be a passion of yours. If you're saying I have no passion for that whatsoever, right? I don't want to have any knowledge of that. I don't want to do that. Then the other side I would say is whatever you may have a passion for that's not in that space, make sure you connect as early as possible with someone who could be your mentor. If you say,
Mm.
I want to be in graphic design, okay, find the person who owns a great graphic design company in your area, business in your area, and reach out to them. Say, look, I'm just starting out in this, or I'm in this in college, and I really, I see you're very successful. I would love to pick your brain. Would you mind being my mentor in this space, or at least, maybe at least just if you mind, can I reach out to you? We go out for coffee. My treat, to I can just pick your brain on a few things. Maybe once a month or so. I don't know whatever schedule your schedule could allow. That's the other space is to make sure you go after if you're going to go a different path. Make sure you try to figure out where the potholes are, the road bumps are, well ahead of you actually getting there because the way things again are moving, it's so fast that you might not have the time for it.
Mm. How about what about yourself? Were there early mentors in your career that charted the path?
Oh
That
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, they were great. So there were, first of all, I had a great professor in college, and then it's funny because I went to school for pharmacy, right? I went to Rutgers in New Brunswick for pharmacy. So I started out and I was set on that. I'm like, I'm going to be a pharmacist, what I'm going to do, right? No question about it. And then I got there, pleasure fraternity, and found out that pharmacy life and fraternity life didn't mix too well.
ha,
So I chose, of course, the wise path and went with the fraternity life, right? So yeah, being joking, if there's any kids here in college listening to this, don't do that path. Well, you can do that path, be smarter than I was anyway. So didn't work out for pharmacy, but I had taken some psychology electives, and so I had this professor that was just phenomenal. Like
ha.
when I took the classes for psychology, like the light bulbs just were popping all over. I'm like, oh my God, that makes sense. I understand that now. I understand why this happens. Like so much knowledge, like the great big curtain was kind of pulled back, and it made me so aware, self-aware, and also just in general aware of why people do things, right? Motivation, actions, just crazy things. It was great. So much so I loved it, and I ended up getting my degree in it, which didn't work out financially because I found out, hey man, I need to also still keep going in school and get my master's and doctorate in order to actually make money in psychology. So I was a little bummed about that, but looking back in time, psychology is one of the best majors I could have taken for business development and for financial services because at the end of the day, I'm really just coaching and counseling people for the most part, right? That's really the job is coaching and counseling, figuring out what it is, where the problems are, and guiding them to the best place to get their solution. That's it. It's coaching and counseling. How can I help you get better? How can I help you get to your best place? So, um, so that he was a mentor, but also more recently is Peter Cordua. I don't know if you know Peter, but used to be a partner at HBK, and he's the one that brought me into HBK when I started there. And but way before that, I knew him through networking. And Peter was this unique, or is, I should say, is this unique guy because he's still out there. He's doing his own consulting now. He's out of HBK. He's done as a partner there, and he's moved on. And he he has this unique way of having like the split brain kind of he's an expert and excellent in the accounting space. In that he's like picks up stuff, but he also has this other part of his brain that he understands how to network, how to connect with people, the soft side, right? The soft skills, the hard skills. So again, back to that, soft skills are what people don't have. A lot of people are less of in the world today. The youngsters, they're just not there. This whole communication thing, right? It's built on that. That's those are the reps
Mhm.
for talking to
Yeah.
people, and that's not happening as much. So, but getting back to it, but Peter was an expert in that. I mean, he had to grow his bit. He started back then, and this is what we're losing also in the accounting space, are those partners that actually had to build their own business and then also be the business, right? They had to get clients, they had to build a business, and then also do the business and keep growing. Today's world, a lot of the people coming in, you don't have to grow the business. You're coming in as a worker, right? Hey, do the work. We have the business, do the work. But then the problem is as they get up the chain, it's like, okay, now you also have to bring in business. And they're like, I don't know how to do that. That's not what I do. It's not why I'm here. That's not what I signed up for. And that's a
What
lot of conversation. But
what
so
is that? No,
back,
go ahead. No, go
Peter,
ahead.
Peter, Peter is Corda, one of my huge mentor in in that space. And and then I always go back to, well, not so much mentors, but inspiration is just like watching my dad and people of his generation do work. I mean, hard work never hurts. It only helps. It might not provide dividends today, but it absolutely will help. And that's the thing. People don't, they get away from hard work. Like, go to the gym. You know the gym, you understand the gym. Hard work, right? You do hard work, dividends will come. But it may not come right away. Sometimes it does, but it will come because you're following a proven path. Hard work is a proven path. But a lot of people don't want to go down that path. They want to get to the shortcut. So but yeah, to the point. So that's that. I would say those basically, my mentors in this space. Most recently, yeah, Peter, because he's a great, like you said, conciliary for you. Like you're saying, he's someone I can ask anything, and he's great at going back, like asking the question. I ask a question, he'll say, okay, well, my thoughts are, what do you think about that? And just being able to get me to a place to say, okay, that makes sense. I understand. I think I see, maybe a better way to do this or whatever the case. I mean, that's ultimately what you want in a mentor, right? Someone who can not going to tell you exactly how to do it, but help you to figure out what's the best way for you to do it.
What is learned in the business? Right, there's doing the work and then there's growing the book. What would you say is learned in growing the book? What does that person learn?
Um, so okay, so you're talking in the give me a little more flavor on that. So you're saying on the BD sense, like what do I learn?
Like that profession, you said that in the past people
Yeah.
would
Okay.
get the business, do the work, and now
Right.
it might be just
Right.
do the work, not
Right.
get the business.
Okay.
What does one learn doing the work and getting the business that could be different than are there values that that are lost in having just one versus both?
Gotcha. No, that makes sense now. Yeah. So no, without question, there are things that are definitely learned. So when you're in the business, right, you're in charge of the relationship and the actual deliverable, the work. When you're in charge of both, and look, if you're bringing in the business, you have the relationship, and then you are the client service representative. The client calls you for questions, right? They want to ask about the work. So here's the thing: a lot of times, look, when a client sees a tax return or any kind of financial document, right? They're not typically the expert. You are, or at least the people on our side, right? The professionals are. They're the experts. So if a question is asked, they don't know the answer. That's why they're asking the question. But if you don't have a relationship with that person, it's very hard to understand maybe where that's coming from. It's hard to understand. Do they have some fears attached because maybe you haven't developed that relationship? What you don't get is the understanding of the relationship, right? If you just think it's all numbers, here you go, here's what it is, this is the work I did, so here's the bill, just pay it. Why would you have a problem paying it? It's the work I did. Here you go. You should see the work, so there's no problem paying it, right? That's not the way the client, the process, the client understands it because they don't know. They don't know. They don't know all the work you're doing in the background. They don't know all the time it's taking, right? They have no idea. So without having a conversation or relationship with that client, talking to them, explain them, and just simply that they have trust in you, right? They just believe that you're doing the right thing by them. Without having that built up, you're leaving a lot now to be just based on the business being commoditized, pricing. It's a race to zero at that point. Well, I don't really feel like, I'm getting any answers here, and I definitely don't have a relationship. Guy down the street's offering me 10% less. Why wouldn't I go with them? And that becomes the question. Why wouldn't I go with somebody else? The answer should be because I have a relationship with them and I trust them and they give me the right advice. And, I just feel like they're looking out for my best interest. So that's why I'm not going to go. So even if it's cheaper, I'm not willing to give that up. That's the problem. They're willing to give it up because it's not there. So they'll go somewhere else based on pricing if you don't have that relationship. So the advisor, unfortunately, the problem is not so much when they're at the ground level and they're doing the work, but if you're ultimately wanting that advisor, the accountant, the financial advisor, anybody to become some point the partner, someone who's actually in charge of the situation, if they don't have that ability to have that to create that relationship, strengthen a relationship, continue that relationship, then your business is just a commodity at that point, right? It's just based on pricing. It's if I can get it somewhere else cheaper, I'm going cheaper because I don't have a relationship with you. And it's very hard to teach that at the top. They need to learn it along the way. And one of the best ways is bringing in business, going to places, meeting people, having that conversation, right? You're not necessarily saying, hey, you want to buy this, you want to buy this. And I think that's the problem is that for a lot of them, they don't understand the soft skills, they don't understand where it's at. But again, it's kind of like getting back to that whole selling is dating, dating is selling analogy, right? The first time you meet someone, you don't go, hey, let's get married, right? I mean, it's a little too much of a hard sell up front, right? But it might be, hey, you know what? Which class are you going to? Oh, yeah, and I'm going that way too. I'll walk you that way. Okay. Little soft touches, right? Little soft things along the way to enhance and create the relationship so they can like you, right? So they can get to know you.
We've had some great thought leaders on the show in and around professional services. This theme, it keeps coming up. This idea that someone leaves school, they have the book knowledge, they have the content. How do they learn the nuance or the gray? And and,
Well,
and it's been said on the
yeah,
show, like Alan Whitman, Juan Pablo Gonzalez, I just two to come to mind, being out there like you're elaborating
right.
on the road with the team or in the office. There are things that are being picked up. I would look at it and analyze it like there are things happening even below consciousness, below awareness, that
Yeah.
there's an experience going on that's impacting the individual. Just like if people say, oh, I didn't learn anything at school. You're learning things that are even beyond what you're aware of that you're learning just by being around people. And
oh,
so
I
I'm
mean, you're
curious your
exactly right.
thoughts on that.
As much as technology may change things, you still aren't changing human nature and psychology, right? There's certain things were based on certain chemical reactions, right? Pheromones, hormones, visually, right? Your eyes are your one of the few areas that are extension of your brain outside of the actual the skull, right? And that's a direct feed. So a lot of what you see, right, even taste and smell is in below level is affecting your knowledge, right? When you look at anything, like there's no better teacher for life than life. You have to get out and actually live it. So you can coach someone all day for sports, right? Football, but until you get that first game, the speed of the game completely different. How it feels to get hit by someone who actually wants to hurt you, completely different. Saw it for wrestling with my son, completely different. Coaching, training in the front end, and then getting them in the real world war. My dad was in the Army 27 years, same thing. You could train all day, but until you actually in on that battlefield, you don't know what reality is until you're in it, right? So without having that, right? Without having that exposure to get out and be in the space, I mean, we're not the old adage, right? You're not kicking them out of the nests, right? They're not learning how to fly. And at some point they have to. They got to get out. The problem is it makes it technology and just certain, just environments make it easier for that little bird to stay in the nest whether it be home or work or whatever, a lot longer than is beneficial for them. Because at some point, ultimately, they have to get out there, or they're just a victim to whatever way the literally the wind blows, right? If it blows them out of the nest, they fall on the ground, they haven't learned to fly. There you are. I mean, that's it. Like, there you go. That's where you are now. So it's it still comes back to that, but I think we start to fall under this false impression because technology allows for a lot of things to be done automatically, that then you don't have to do certain things anymore because they were not appealing. There's always going to be, like, look, I may not have to manually type 100 emails because automation will allow me to template emails or even just add in names, or AI could even rewrite the email, right? Still that. But you still have to engage with the person at the end of the day, right? Automation is going to help, but automation will not carry you to the end line. And I think in a way that allows for opportunity for honestly people like me and those of us who are still out there standing. The old adage used to be, hey man, you better keep running, you better run hard because someone's coming right up behind you to eat your lunch. So you better be careful and you better get moving. Right? You turn around today, there's nobody there. It's just a weird world right now in that people are not being taught soft skills and they're not engaging as much as they used to. They're just not out there. So COVID was a factor. It was also a blip too, right? Brought everyone in. Like, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to be out there. And so there's some people still like, I can get away with not doing it, right? But that only works if you're in a commoditized area. Professional services, that's a lot tougher because you still need to be in front of people to for that person to gain you get you for you to gain their trust. But yeah, it's nothing is going to ever until human beings fundamentally change, psychologically, physically, mentally, right, emotionally, all of it. You still need those basic things to happen that allow me to have confidence in somebody. Look, that's all you have to do. Put yourself in that same person's shoes. Someone comes up online and says, "Hey, I got this car I want to sell you for 10 grand," and you don't know anything about it, yeah, you might do it. You might investigate it. But if they're like, hey, you know what? We're going to do neurosurgery on you tomorrow, and all we're doing is just talking online here, and I got this great, I need more than that, man, because the value proposition way different, right? And that's the whole point. Sell a commodity. I can buy stuff online on Amazon all day and have very little fear of it because, well, Amazon's vetted for one and return policy is fine. So I'm not too worried about it, right? There's a lot of things I'll buy online because I feel like those things matter. Or if it's a dud, it's not that big a deal. I'm not spending a whole lot of money on it, right? I expect that. But when things have a certain value that's beyond money, that's more important, that's when you say, you know what? Let's get together. Let's talk about this.
It seems like from this conversation, the small business owner, this you said s- the white silver wave.
Over tsunami. Yeah, I did steal that. I'm going to give that credit that I did not make that up. Even though my last name is Silva, so you would think I did because it sounds pretty good, right? The Silva tsunami, but no, it's the silver tsunami, right?
So this silver tsunami, it seems like if if in the past the silver tsunami, there was like it was almost like, well, it's going to be passed down one way or another.
Well,
If there's
well,
tension on that more than ever,
right.
then it seems like a renaissance for advisors.
So yes and no. Number one, like so again, it's called the silver tsunami because this tsunami is something that hasn't happened before, right? This many baby boomers who are rolling out because you have that gigantic population of that age group that are the business owners are all heading toward retirement, right? Before that, there wasn't that much, it wasn't as big, and behind it is tiny, right? So it would be, I guess, me, like the Gen Xers, right? Behind the baby boomers, which is a smaller population compared to those, there's not enough of us to take over. There's not enough of us to get in that space to fill up. So, yes, it's great for the advisor, but the problem is in the same regard, like what's the average age of the advisor who's talking to them? My age. Again, a smaller amount to advise on this bigger population. Once again, even the same problem is who's there to take over for those the silver tsunami business owners is the same group that we're saying aren't as comfortable being out there with the soft skills. So you still have that same kind of issue. The same issue you have with them with business continuation is the same issue you have, or business succession is the same issue you have with finding the amount of advisors to be able to help that same group, that same population. So one advisor can help a number of businesses, but they have a structure underneath that has to support that, right? I mean, they need teams to actually do the reports, do the due diligence, etc. So ultimately, what happens is, like I was saying before, you start to have the smaller business owners start to become lower down the pole because the bigger ones are taking up more of the time and paying more of the money, right? So this is where we go with this. That's why it's such a kind of panic mode right now.
Wow. What would you say you're most excited for then for 26, 7?
Honestly, the opportunity with this new with Saks with the new firm because of what they offer to the businesses out there, the business owners, what they have available, and what I'm seeing with the environment, the accounting environment, right? So you have in the accounting world right now a lot. In the same way we're talking about the silver tsunami, right? Private equity coming in, and firms just merging together to get bigger, right? So we just had this with CBiz and Markham previously purchased Friedman. So you're going up, and whenever this happens, and there's great guys there and gals at from Friedman that I knew from and Markham, and even CBiz is a great company, but you have it all over. Baker Tilly had it, Grant Thornton was looking at it, I believe, Eisner. You go down the list, right? They all have taken on different kind of changes where now what happens is their arms get bigger. So what I mean is you have conflicts of interest that happen in accounting where if I'm doing, let's say, the audit work, I can't do your tax work, right? Now, if you were one company, you just had to worry about that conflict within that company. But now, if I'm two companies that come together, now I have to worry about that conflict around both companies. Now, the one new company. So there are more conflicts, meaning there's more opportunities for clients because for us with clients, because they just can't do the business. Number one, there's conflicts, right? And all these mergers mean there's more conflicts. Secondly, also with the mergers, is just simply capacity. If I am or if I'm let's say senior, it goes advisor, or excuse me, associate, senior associate, manager, senior manager, then you become partner. Usually that's the structure within accounting firms. So if I'm anywhere below partner, if I'm a senior associate, manager, senior manager, anything in that space, and then we have this, all of a sudden these firms go together, right? And I'm going, wait a minute, what does this mean for me? How am I going to become a partner now? The structure has changed. So what happens is if someone who's wanting to grow into a space, when this happens, they say, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else because partners get paid out. When those deals happen, they get paid. But if you're under that partner level, you typically do not. You're still in the mix. So it usually, I'm not saying always, but I should say sometimes, so let's put it that way. Sometimes it's not that favorable for that professional to remain in that situation once that occurs. So what then you face are capacity issues. They don't necessarily have enough professionals or people to actually do the work that needs to be done. So why is that an opportunity? Because a firm like ours, like I said, we only accept the 19% equity. We're private equity fusion. We're not going more than that. We have a very robust and extremely knowledgeable a base of advisors or partners and professionals within our organization that are literally some of the top people. We're right there. I mean, we are right there. We're top in the state, top in the country, top in nationally. So we have opportunity to be able to provide services to basically businesses who are so hungry right now to be able to have an organization like ours provide those services for them. They are thirsty for it because they've grown. For some of these firms, they've grown as well. They've grown the construction firms, as I know, manufacturing, they've grown three, four, five times. Over the last 4 or 5 years, they've grown massively. And either they still have a smaller firm that can't keep up, or they were in a larger firm. Now all of a sudden, they're in the mill, they're in the mix, but they're not getting the service like they used to. And that's the piece that they're looking at and say, hey, I'm spending good five, maybe six figures on services, and I'm not getting anywhere near what I was getting before.
I was thinking about the word service. Okay. Service. The etymology is Latin. So servitude, rooted in servant, core, and it even says slave. Okay, that's interesting. Core meaning, to render help, assistance, or benefit to another. Modern sense, a modern sense, voluntary or professional acts done for the well-being of someone else, often with humility and intention. Philosophical angle, service is the act of placing others' needs at the center. It turns personal ability into social value. So I think professional service. Let's say there's a culture shock. I'm in a sense, if I come into a tremendous amount of capital, there better be some type of impulse to go back into service where counterintuitively I could be incented to go sip Mai Tais or go, somewhere else. I'm being incented to do the opposite, the antithesis of what presupposes the culture, which is service. So culture comes as a consequence. It's a result of the customer service, the customer being served. It's what is professional services? It's about serving and those at the top of the hierarchy in ultimate authority and influence. Their example is what inspires those young youth coming out of the school, they're inspired. They see, oh, this is the path. This is what I want. This is who I want to be like. Obviously, with the world changing and the institution, the plates shifting, maybe they're not seeing or experiencing that like they once did. I'm just thinking out loud here. Is like the I would say the one thing that could be really a big opportunity for a company would be if they do come into capital and those people at the top, they find a news story, right? And they can tell that story and they talk about, where they're going and why they're going there and how and model those core values that could really create huge tailwinds behind them versus some of the headwinds that could happen with this structure changing. Curious. Oh, I also looked up, and by the way, AI, right? I can like very
Yeah,
quickly, I don't need Jamie on Joe Rogan.
right,
Sorry, Jamie. What is the etymology of professional?
right,
It says public declaration, meaning to declare openly what one does. And by the way, I already fed it like the context of this conversation. So it's giving me
right.
actual right here, professional, core meaning, someone who professes specialized knowledge or skill, usually in exchange for compensation. In a modern sense, a standard of conduct, reliable, competent, ethical, consistent in execution, philosophical angle. To be professional is not just to get paid, but to embody responsibility and integrity in practice. You elucidated on all of these things. Brilliant episode. But I look, what is professional service? Right? What does it mean? And I think Joe, what a great episode to help our listeners kind of recapture what it means, like what it can mean, and what the opportunities are. But yeah, curious of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, I I think to your point about service, it's comes down to, if the person is going to take the money and run, sip Mai Tais on the beach, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it becomes one of those decisions, right? To decide to cut away, to decision saying, I would rather do this than continue to provide service to the client. To, like you said, to serve, right? If you I mean, I don't think anyone would question, for the most part, if you're in a emergency room and there's a person that comes in who's about to die and does not have insurance, whether or not that professional is going to, again, professional is going to provide service and give them the right treatment to be healed, right? We think about, they're like, of course. But I think a lot of times we then minimize that when it comes to other professional service. Now, again, not putting that on par with the health field, right? With the medical, with the doctor, because that's at the highest level. But I think we oftentimes start to commoditize the product offering as opposed to understanding there's really is a service. The value is within the service, within the help, within,
The
if you
relationship.
don't want to help that person, then it doesn't matter. And that's where the culture comes in. That's where it comes down from the top is like, look, we're in the business of helping. That's the business we're in. It's like Apple. What's Apple in the business of? They're not computers. They're in the entertainment business, right?
Mm.
They do it by they're in the service business. How they do it by they happen to provide these products. We're in that same business. We're in the help business. We help people. We help businesses. How do we help them? With a number of products, number of services lines that we figure, and that's the whole point. How more can we help a client? We realize where is there something that they more need? Oh, we should bring in, when they have with their business owner, they also need their personal planning. Well, we have a wealth advisors, and we may need to look at estate planning, right? They want to sell, so they need to get to a bank and get to figure. Well, maybe we need to get an investment bank. Maybe we need to do that. When you're in the mindset of helping, you create the ecosystem that's going to fulfill that need. And whatever you're in the mindset, if you're in the mindset of, hey man, we're going to sell products and we want to make money, well, then you're going to build the ecosystem to help you make money. It may not necessarily help the client, but or the customer, but it's going to serve the purpose of whatever that purpose is that you have designated. But if you're in a business of helping people, then you're going to build the ecosystem to help. You're going to serve at that point. That's what you feel is your motivation. If it's not, it's not. I mean, I think we've gotten away from that a lot. I think that's the other pieces. I mean, you could just go to any store, unfortunately, and feel that at times that service level has declined tremendously, right? And for a lot of people, for me, if I was in that other in the other side, the service would have to be higher simply because it's innately uncomfortable for me for that to happen, right? It's innately uncomfortable for me to not have etiquette, to not say please and thank you, to not hold the door, right? I turned around today, I was coming out of the gym, and the woman was right behind me, the was behind me, and I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't hold the door because I didn't know she was there. I felt bad. I felt bad because I didn't hold the door because I didn't know she was there, but I still felt bad. Again, that's something here. That's taught. That was something that was modeled for me. And I guess that's the whole point, right? We talk about mentors
Mm.
and there's not enough of that. Because if there was, I'm just going by evidence, right? It's anecdotal, of course, but just by evidence, I don't think you'd see what I'd see if I'm sitting at the Walmart parking lot or Wawa parking lot and seeing how many kids are not, or younger people, or anybody, not even younger. We go down the line. Anybody not holding doors as much as I would see, or letting someone else go in first who might be, older, have a child in arm, whatever the case may be, right? You just don't see it as much. So something's not triggering that uncomfortableness. And I think it's because it's not been modeled, right? I'm making a guess. Like I said, it's an anecdotal assumption, but that's what I see. So with that, there's an opportunity because people, just because it's not there, doesn't mean people aren't dying or thirsty for it, right? They're hungry for that service. You fill that gap by a little bit. Like you go to a restaurant, you just get that little bit of extra service. That, server comes around, just a little extra. Everything all right? You guys need more water? Everything good? Great, great. Thanks so much for coming. You're like, this best service I ever had in my life because it's that the bar is so low now, right? It's incredible, but that's where we're at. So
Mm.
that's also the opportunity.
Joe, thank you so much for coming back
Listen,
to the
thank you so
Culture
much for
Matters
having me, man.
podcast.
Anytime. It's always a pleasure, man. I appreciate you bringing me on. It's always a vote of confidence. Whoever you have on your podcast is clearly someone that you feel is worthwhile to have on your podcast. So I appreciate that.
Without a doubt, I challenge our listeners to go listen to episode 622 and 399, the Culture Matters podcast. How can people connect with you?
So easiest way is email for sure. J Silva, JSILVA at saxadvisorygroup.com. Definitely the easiest way. I am absolutely on LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't even remember my LinkedIn. Is it JP Silva JR1 maybe? I think that might be right. But if you look up Joseph P. Silva Jr., that is where you would find me. So, and it's hard to mistake the face because it'll definitely be the same. So yeah, that's probably the best, but I appreciate it.
I look forward to the next time, my friend. If you're listening to this, share this with a friend. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.